No. Well, thank you everybody for registering for this and putting up with my ineptitude or whatever in getting it all organized. I appreciate your patience with the many emails that came out. I thought this was a really timely topic. We're into the spring, into summer in some places, at least weather-wise. And now's the time that athletes are looking to get into condition for the coming season. And there's no better person in this country to talk about this than Steph Thompson. Steph is a registered kinesiologist. She graduated from with an honors Bachelor of Arts from Western University. She has a Bachelor of Education from Trent University, so she knows how to teach as well. She's a certified exercise professional. She's a personal trainer, and she's a certified urban poling instructor. So anybody that ever wants to get their core in shape, buy a set of the urban poles and away you go. Steph is also a certified competition coach, and she's competition development and training. So not only does Steph know strength training and conditioning, she knows curling. And in addition to all of this, Steph is also an accomplished competitive curler. So Steph, thank you so much for doing this. One more quick things before we get started. If you have questions, you're welcome to use the chat and I will relay them to Stephanie. You can ask your question when Steph takes a breath, or you can wait till the end of the presentation and then we'll have time for questions then. So thank you so much, Stephanie, for agreeing to do this. This is awesome. Here's my friend Steph.
Yay. Oh, thank you. That was awesome. Okay, I'm going to let you let people in now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I got to get like super close for some reason when I do that. But yeah, thank you, Andrew. That was really wonderful. I was counting how many years I've worked with curlers the other day for a podcast. And this is the 8th summer that I've worked with teams and individuals in the off ice season. This is going to be year 12 of working at camp, and over 15 years of coaching and competing myself. So it's kind of neat to see that years add up, opposed to being like, oh, I worked with curlers for 1 year. Kind of nice to see the experience adding up and all that. So today, this could be incredibly broad. I'm going to try to be as specific as possible, but what I'm really hoping is that I can give you kind of the Coles notes, the structure of how I would organize strength training for the U18 and under age, kind of that high school age athlete. I just want to take a moment and make sure we recognize that when someone starts some form of training program, or if you're going to find if you have a team, half of them have worked out before and half of them haven't. So just recognizing that you're meeting the athlete where they're at in terms of time commitment, the equipment that you're working with. So you could say, I struggle when I'm working with teams and they're like, oh, I've got a U15 team, but they've all trained before. And they're probably doing a harder program than a U21 team of athletes who've never worked out. So in one respect, there are ages, but then there's also just what is your own personal ability. So I know that's a tough thing to judge, but just recognize that you might have an athlete for a win is that they actually do some exercise. And then for others, it's that they are becoming more specific with curling. So we've got the LTAD, but then we also have that personal athlete in front of you. So what I want to do is I want to kind of zoom out and roughly talk about entire season training. I did a podcast with, oh my God, I'm mixing up. Kyle Turcotte's the strength and conditioning coach, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, there's two Kyles and I mixed them up.
Yeah. Kyle Turcotte is conditioning. Yep.
Yeah. And I was so happy when I had him on my podcast. He talked about how his elite athletes are training year round. So I just want to point out the importance of that. And what I vision is that in the off season is when you're gathering up all your strength and your fitness and your tools for recovery. And then you're just maintaining all that in season. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a lowdown on that. Roughly talk about how I organize an off season. So number one, being physically active is really important for our youth athletes. Multi-sports is really important for our youth athletes. It gives them a chance to increase their physical literacy. But as soon as they want to be a little bit more curling specific, we need to look at how much time we have. And in my opinion, we're going to organize that time specifically to help accomplish some goals. So I'm going to talk about how I would organize an off season with different progressions. And then of course, I'll go through what I call my key exercises. So if I make a curling specific program, it's going to have some variation of the exercises that I've added in here. So you're going to have little photos that you could go on YouTube and hunt down the videos for, or message me if you're like really stuck. And then one thing we'll talk about is the resistance debate. So there used to be this stigma around resistance training, weightlifting for youth athletes. And I want to talk about a little bit about the research that's come out to say that that's not the case. And it never was the case that the study that we used was poorly done. Like a lot of studies where we start to go, oh, you know what, that wasn't a great study, but we took the information point blank and moved forward. So that's what we're going to talk about in the next 60 minutes. And there's a lot of little things. Okay, goals and priorities. So what I like to think about is when I first started training with curlers and talking to teams, the coaches would get a little scared because they were afraid that I was going to take away from them being on the ice. And what I like to reiterate is that training should make being on the ice easier and better. It shouldn't be something that's making you so sore you can't practice. It shouldn't be something that's taking up time that should be spent on the ice. And the way that I like to do that is thinking of that full season plan and understanding that our priorities are shifting. This is also why when I get a team and they're practicing 4 times a week and they're playing every other weekend and they say, oh, I can only work out twice a week. Well, you just had 8 hours that you dedicated to training before. Now we don't have to turn all of them into training, but we should be able to reprioritize our time to put training on the pedestal a bit. So roughly we've got off ice season, which is what we're going to talk about now. And the priority there is being off the ice, recovering, getting stronger, getting fitter, working on a mental game. Maybe you're starting to look at some old game film. This is the time where your athletes get a chance to kind of take a breather from curling, but make themselves stronger and better. So that when they hit the season, we're just maintaining that fitness. It makes so much, anybody who's gotten fit before knows how much easier it is to keep the fitness than it is to try to build it up. So I'm not advocating for getting stronger during the season. I want my athletes to be getting strong in the off season so that when you're training in season, it's not taking away from your competition. Okay. So in the post season, which is we're kind of there now, depending on when your season starts and when your season ended. But this is when we're doing some reflection. Lots of teams, lots of athletes are sitting down going, what did I do really well last year? What do I want to accomplish next year? Figure out that gap. And this is where we use various types of gap analysis. I'll share mine in the chat at the end to look at what do we need to improve and what kind of things can we do off the ice to make things like the delivery easier, to make things like takeouts easier, to make things like brushing, getting in a brushing position and feel strong and confident. We can do stuff off the ice to help us with that. And especially if you're trying to be one of those brushers that can work really hard and recover really quickly, we can do things off the ice now to make that easier in the season. Okay, so postseason, reflection, determine what you need to work on and set a plan to do that. Off ice, get super strong. Pre-season, we're working on planning for the year. And then of course, competition season, if you did your job right, you're just maintaining your fitness. So if anything, it should make you feel good, not sore and tired. Okay, but we're just talking about gen prep for curlers here. Okay, so there are 3 phases in my brain when I'm putting together a program for a team or an athlete. Okay, it's not just, I'm gonna do Zumba, I'm gonna do Orange Theory, I'm gonna do CrossFit, which is, granted, many of those places do wonderful jobs at programming, progressively programming, but for curling, the way that I kind of wrap my head around it is we've got 3 different phases that we're going to pay attention to. So in a perfect world, I work with the team for 3 or 4 months. We do about a month of general preparation. Okay, number one, as I mentioned, you want to get those athletes to train and do something. So habit of training is number one here. Moving well, you'll see moving well is a common denominator of all the phases, because I believe that moving well allows you to be a really efficient athlete. And we're going to talk about that. Work capacity is something that a lot of athletes call aerobic fitness, but I think that it lands a little bit better with our athletes when we're talking about being able to do a lot of work for a long period of time and recover from that work. So I feel like I can do work with less effort and I can recover from that work. And then of course, there's related to work capacity is muscular endurance. So muscle endurance in terms of being able to do lots of push-ups, lots of lunges, lots of step-ups, lots of repetitions to really build that work capacity of the muscles and the heart and lungs. Once we build that solid foundation of movement, aerobic fitness, muscular endurance, this is when I have my athletes start to work on their strength and their anaerobic fitness. And I'm going to dive in deeper on these in the next few slides. But roughly, again, we want to make sure we're moving well. Any athlete that's ever been injured, it's really hard to be strong and lift heavy if your back hurts, if your knee hurts, if your wrist hurts. It holds you back. So that's where we're really focusing on throughout the program, making sure your athletes are strong and healthy and moving well. If you've got an athlete that's got long-term injuries, sometimes an off-season is just best spent trying to figure that injury out, because you're moving well, so much easier to do the things that you want to do in season. So we start to focus on strength and we start to focus on anaerobic fitness. I have slides that dive into this. And then once we build the endurance and work capacity, we increase our strength, then we can start to think about power, because power isn't just about moving quickly, it's about applying a lot of force quickly. So you need the strength before we start to use the idea of improving our power. I know a lot of athletes will come off the season and go straight into box jumps, straight into power cleans without also working on their strength. So you're just getting faster, but you're not increasing how much force you can apply to the hack or to the brush. This is also as we get closer to the season, when I start to think about my intervals being more sports specific, more curling specific, more closer to that 20 to 30 second interval. Maybe you have access to some dry land sweeping contraptions, okay? So we can really mimic what it feels like to sweep, okay? So that's the off season, gen prep, strength and anaerobic fitness, then power and brushing intervals. Depending on what your goal is, if you've kind of got a broad general fitness goal, you can improve your cardio and your strength throughout an entire off season this way. Hey, if you had someone whose cardio was pretty good, they just want to work on their strength, then they're just going to maintain their cardio and put their efforts into strength and vice versa. Okay, so just roughly thinking about the demands of curling, I've got 3 ways that I like to do that. Ooh, let's check the chat. Any questions?
Nope, no questions.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so 3 things that I like to think of in terms of the demands of curling. So actually, let me ask, I've already got the stuff out there, but I want you to think about and write in the chat, what do you think of when you think, ooh, that person has a really good delivery? How might you describe that delivery? Just pop that in the chat. What makes someone have a really good delivery? Qualities are within a delivery. And I'm talking about the slide, the curling slide. You've got some thoughts. Sturdy, it's clean, so not a lot of pieces moving side to side, it's balanced. Explosive, they're able to be powerful. Good. Balance, good leg drive, good extension. Wonderful. Clean execution of power and weight movement, yeah, good. So good. They have, no one's mentioned yet, they have the ability to control different amounts of power. They have no pain. That's a huge one. I want an athlete that has no pain when they throw, because if you have discomfort or pain, or might possibly, that's going to weigh on your brain. Okay, so in terms of the demands of the delivery, those are the demands of the delivery. What about someone who's a really awesome brusher? They're in a really good position and they're really efficient and you think they're doing a really good job. How would you describe a really good sweeper or brusher? They can apply a lot of pressure downwards. They're strong. They've got good footwork, coordination, good core strength. There's really no wrong answer. This is great. Powerful, controlled. Yep, we don't have a lot of limbs flying side to side. In terms of, nobody's put this yet, speed and power. Yep, really quick brush head, speed. I like to think of a really good brusher as someone that is working their absolute hardest. They stand up, they're out of breath for a second, and by the time the next shot happens, they've got their breath back, right? Yep, judge weight, communicate with the team. You're a smart sweeper as well. Good. Okay, speedy spider. Awesome. Okay, so in terms of the demands of curling, we've got positions, which are a squat, and I'm going to show these in the exercises at the end. A squat, which is a bend at the ankle, knee, and hip. A hinge, which is a bend at the hip, so like a deadlift. A plank position. We're doing something that's pushing, something that's pulling. We're reaching. We're twisting. Okay, we're lunging sideways. We're running. We're jumping. We've got balance. We can slide on a foot. In terms of the demands of curling as relates to cardiorespiratory fitness, we can stay alert and active for long periods of time. We can work really hard and recover quickly. We can use our muscles repeatedly, and we can recover from games and events. These are the things I've literally pulled from athletes' intake forms. What do you want to work on? What do you want to work on? A lot of them want to be able to recover quickly, be able to deal with their sore muscles. They don't want to have any pain. They want, and again, looking at strength, we're looking at full body. Curling is a full body activity, upper body and lower body strength and power. So bilaterally means both legs or both arms at the same time. And unilaterally means one leg is doing one thing, or one arm is doing one thing. Okay. Now, arguably, those are really broad, really black and white terms, and there's a little bit of an overlap there, because even though a lunge is working, we're focusing on that front leg, the back leg's still working. Even when we're pushing in a row, a bent row, one arm is still pushing, one arm is pulling. Like there still is a bilateral activity, even if we think unilaterally. So to break these down a little bit more, okay, what I want to talk about is when it comes to moving well, is understanding that those athletes can own the movement. So if I'm looking at this list, squat, hinge, plank, push, pull, reach, twist, turn, lunge, jump, balance, and slide. I want them to own those movements off the ice so that you as the coach, or you as the athlete talking to your coach, can now help your athlete move better and adjust their technique without having to worry about, oh, can they squat down? Can they lunge? Can they hold their body weight up? We've done those things off the ice. So now I can say, yes, move your feet out a little bit further and push your body weight over the brush. You have the confidence, I have the confidence, and we know that you're going to be able to make those technique adjustments so much easier. A, you've got the body awareness, and B, you've got the movements. You practice them for 3 months, okay? So owning the movement is 3 things for me. It means that you can hold the position. Can you get into the squat, into the hack and hold it? Or are you afraid of some pain? Okay, can you hold the slide? Can you hold the brushing position? Okay, a lot of times if we have to hold that for many times and we've got pain, we're gonna have an energy leak somewhere, okay? Can you repeat it? So owning the movement is holding it and repeating it. So thinking about a lunge, I'm stepping forward, I'm stepping back, I'm stepping forward. Can you do that over and over and over again? Or are you gonna have pain? Or are you gonna get tired? And then the third is that idea of power. Can you get in and out of the position really quickly and powerful? Okay, so holding the position, repeating the position, and getting in and out quickly. Kind of sounds like gen prep, strength and anaerobic, and power and growing specific exercises. So we're almost adjusting the program in the same way that I want my athletes to move well and own those movements. So this means you'll notice there's problems if your athletes can't own the movement. because there's going to be energy leaks. We just talked about we want the delivery to be clean and precise. We want the sweeping to look really good and controlled. So it means that if I want to slide that way, I don't have any speed wobbles, which means energy is going sideways instead of forward. It means if I want to go that way while I'm brushing, I don't have legs going in front of me, right? Or I don't have my body to one side and leaning sideways the other way. So we're using training to teach our athletes how to move well so that there's no energy leaks, which means they're efficient. And what often happens is that athletes and bodies, human beings, are very smart. I want to get in that position. My body can't do it. So I'm going to twist and torque myself to get there, accomplish what coach says, but I'm going to have back pain, but I'm going to have knee pain because I couldn't get in the position, but I needed to get there and my body will figure out a way to do it, which isn't exactly efficient. Okay. So moving really well, really important. This is why if you see an athlete on TV who's like, ah, they're awesome brushers, look at them go, but they're all taped up. They're injured. They're compensating. They've got energy leaks somewhere. They're have to sleep so much between games. They're not fit enough for the position. They've got some competition or compensation. So using the off-ice season to hold the position, repeat the position, and get in and out quick, I think is really important, especially for our youth athletes. Imagine how much easier my job will be when I get that 30-year-old athlete who wants to get a little fitter, but they worked with you to move really well. So I don't have to do that. We can get them get extra fit. Okay, so moving really well, cardiorespiratory fitness. This is cardio, cardiovascular, heart, respiratory, which is lungs. Okay, so this is the efficiency of being able to take in oxygen and get rid of CO2, that gas exchange at the cellular level. So when I want you to think about it, okay? You're at the airport, you've got one person, picture somebody who's not very fit, and picture Caitlin Laws, super fit. Okay, everybody knows Caitlin Laws is. Person who's not very fit and Caitlin Laws, and the elevator and the escalator are broken. You have to take the stairs and you have to carry all your luggage up to the top. Put in the chat, describe to me what the experience of the unfit person is by the time they get to the top of the stairs. What are they going to look like, sound like? How are they going to feel? I keep forgetting to open the chat here. They're exhausted, okay? Sweaty, sure. Sore, fatigued, breathing hard, kind of a little dizzy, a little ready to fall over, red face, out of breath, okay? Good, rough idea. Now, imagine Caitlin Laws, two-time Olympian, okay? Grabs her bag and that guy's bag and runs up the stairs. What does she look like at the top? Probably fine, right? Yeah, I mean, the level of intensity relative to the activity. So for Caitlin, she's probably done stairs with weights on her back. She can friggin' chin up with her baby on her chest, right? So her breathing is slower and quieter, even though that was a pretty intense activity. So when we're looking at our athletes, we want them to be able to do more work that looks like what Caitlin looks like going up those stairs. And of course, there's activities, I'm sure, that she's panting and red-faced and sweaty and sore. Like, sure, she's pushing herself that far, but it's not one single flight of stairs, okay? So when it comes to your cardiorespiratory fitness, this is that efficiency. Every time you take a breath, the body can use it. So Caitlin doesn't need to use as much air as that person who's a little bit less cardio fit. I'm just painting a picture here. So what I like to imagine is we've got an engine, okay? Not a mechanical expert, so deal with me on this analogy. And a lot of people start their off seasons and they're like, intervals, how to do intervals. I want to be better at recovering really quickly. But I see your heart and lungs as having gears. And if all you do is go straight into your intervals, you maybe gain 1 gear that summer. But if you spend time in the gen prep phase, improving your work capacity, to me, that means you get a bigger engine, which means that, let's say before you had 1 to 5, and 5 was that dude who ran up the stairs. But now you're Caitlin Laws, you got 10 years, and 5, you're a little out of breath, but you catch up pretty quickly. So at the beginning of the summer, at this point right now, we're building that work capacity, we're building the muscular endurance, hey, and we're improving, another spelling mistake, we're improving that aerobic capacity, because later it's going to be our recovery system. It means we have more gears. I can work at a 5 and recover to a 2, and I'm like, easy peasy. I can work to a 10, recover to a 5, and still sweep that next shot. Okay, so roughly 2 to 3 times a week, 20 to 60 minutes for your U18 athletes. Okay, those that really want to improve their cardiorespiratory fitness. The next phase, that anaerobic and strength phase, we're working on the anaerobic fitness, which means that we're able to work harder and recover quickly. So this includes things like stairs, carrying things, hill sprints. Okay, so we won't do this as long. The intensity that I want to put into this, I would never be able to do for 20 minutes straight. So I'm going to do 1 to 3 times a week for 5 to 10 rounds. Okay, 60 to 120 seconds of work. So 1 minute to 2 minutes of work. So I'm going to work harder, and then I need to use 90 to 120 seconds of rest to catch my breath. So this teaches me to not only work harder and manage my mindset, manage my breathing. Okay, I understand what it feels like. I have the confidence to work that hard and know that I could do it again. Okay, so build that gear system, use the gears, and then in the final phase, these could all overlap by the end of the summer as well. In the final phase, we're doing shorter intervals, because curling uses 20 to 30-second intervals when we're sweeping. Okay, so again, 5 to 10 rounds of 20 to 40 seconds of work with 90 to 120 seconds of rest. We want that much rest because we want your athletes working really hard. I want them to be training harder off the ice, so that when you tell them to sweep an entire shot, it's 24-second ice, they still have 5 seconds left in the tank. Okay, so we're training them to be stronger than what they need for curling. They're not hitting max by the time, I mean, maybe on the very last shot for the win, okay? But we're not hitting max in the middle of the event, which reminds me, cardio fitness works really well to help our athletes who struggle with energy management. So yes, we want them to go for a 20-minute run. Did they go too hard at the beginning? Or did they get home and they weren't really out of breath? They needed to adjust how intense they were throughout to make sure they can finish what they wanted to with the right amount of intensity. Same thing here. If they're doing, their plan was 8 rounds of this workout and they get to 2 and they're like, I couldn't possibly do more, then they went too hard. If they get to 8 rounds and they're like, oh, I could have done 15, and they didn't go hard enough. This is an opportunity for your athletes to learn how to gauge my intensity for the task. So very similar to being on the ice. I don't want my athletes gummed out at end 2. I want them to have energy in the tank for the last end, the extra end, right? So giving them that opportunity to say, okay, in the 5th end, how are we feeling? I'm hardly doing anything, coach. Okay, you can sweep a little harder, or I'm feeling a little gassed out, okay? So maybe you should have been doing more heavy cleans early on versus later.
I have a question here, Steph. When developing aerobic or anaerobic conditioning, does it matter if it's done via running, biking, or swimming?
No, good question. With most athletes, especially U18, I want you to be doing things that you enjoy. So it's your heart and your lungs at this point, especially with work capacity work, with that aerobic fitness. I want you to find something that you can push yourself enough that like you're going to do it, number one, because that's, if you're not going to do it, then I had an athlete who wanted to be a better brusher, and they actually were like, you know what, for my long endurance stuff, they found, it was during COVID, they found these Zumba workouts online. They got their heart rate up to the appropriate number that we were looking for, and they loved it. So go right ahead, like perfectly fine. What I like to think about though, a little planning ahead, if you've got an athlete that really wants to do hill sprints or stair sprints, I don't really want them to be swimming in these 2 phases, so the work capacity and anaerobic, and then sprinting. Their body just won't be ready for it. So some running would be included there. So thinking about what they're going to do for their harder intervals is going to be gonna apply to what they're doing in here. And I do a mix of running and biking. Myself, I don't mind swimming, but our pool is like 2 strokes across. But yeah, that would be my very broad answer for you. I hope that answered your question. I don't think one's better than the other. I want the athlete to pick something that they enjoy and that feels good for them. We want them to not get injured as well. I know some curlers, they get really twisted in the hips and then they try to run and then their knees and their ankles and their back go out. Probably not the best choice without fixing that movement inefficiency. Okay. Okay. Perfect. Now, that being said, these intervals, I love it if we can find a way to make those, if you want to be a better brusher, upper body specific. So battle ropes, using the bike that has the arms, okay? Swimming would be good as well. Like things that are actually brushing on a dry land pad. I find these are best done if we can be a little bit more specific. Okay, but you're obviously not going to sweep for 20 minutes straight. Be crazy. All right. Okay, strength and power. So throughout the summer, even though Gen Prep, we're focusing on moving well, we're still working on strength and power because I want to build a solid foundation of muscular endurance. I want to know that you can get in the position and hold the position and repeat the position before we start to get into that point where we're being quick in and out of the position. Okay, and I mentioned at the beginning, if I want to put more force into the hack, and I want to be more powerful out of the hack, I can't just go straight to, unless you're already at your max strength, can't just go straight to power movements. I want to increase my strength so I have more force to apply to that hack. Okay? And curling, especially kicking out of the hack, isn't like a really fast activity. So you're not making your athletes slow by strength training. So early in the off season, I like to keep the reps for U18 around 8 to 12 repetitions. This is kind of a medium level of weight. It gives the athletes an opportunity if they're new to training they've got a rep range. Okay, I could use a cable machine for some chest press. If I could get to 12 easy, then next set, I'm going to add some weight. I could try to get to 8. Okay, so it gives them that chance to experiment without setting it's not so heavy that they're going to set themselves up for injury. Which reminds me, when you've got an athlete new to training, tell them to choose the easiest variation and the lightest weight because A, we don't want to get hurt, and B, it feels so much better to add weight onto that machine than to take weight off, right? Well, discouraging. So move well, 8 to 12 reps. Okay, we're looking at movement efficiency here, making sure that we're not having any energy leaks in our off-ice exercises and we're not getting any compensation patterns. Okay, so for example, if I've got an athlete they're doing like a dumbbell dump row, okay, and they get in this position, okay, but I want you to look at their down shoulder and they're shrugged up like this. Not really efficient for brushing. How do I move my arm? So we don't want them doing their off-ice work like this. We want them to be doing it in a way that's going to transfer to better movement on the ice as well. So making sure you're paying attention to your athlete's movement, okay, is going to be really important. Whether it's you, whether it's a trainer, whether they're sending videos to each other, just to make sure that they're not starting some compensation patterns that are going to end up on the ice. Because I can get really strong in this position, but it's not really easy for me to move my arms without something happening up top, for example. Then in the next phase, we're doing 2 to 3 times a week, 8 to 12, but we're going heavier, okay, with a little bit, with 60 seconds of rest. Okay, and then in the power phase, if the athletes want to this should say 5 to, it should also say 5 to 10. It's fine. 8 to 12 reps, okay, 5 to 10 reps, and let's say 4 to 8 reps. Okay, so I can actually add that right in here, just in case you need it. So keep that 8 to 12. Where's the text? There we go. So 5 to 10 and 4 to 6. Now, granted, you've got an athlete that's never trained before. They're really worried about lifting heavier. They don't need to go past this 8 to 12 rep speed. So essentially what we're thinking about is strength on a continuum. If I really want to work on maximum strength, I need to do heavier weight which means I need to do less reps. Right? So 4 to 6 is going to be way heavier than 8 to 12. I can't do the same weight, that really heavy weight for 4 to 6, if you're working within those maxes, as I could with 8 to 12. Okay, good question. So when should they move from section to section? Should they do all of these in a single workout? Let me just pull back and, oh my God, I've got my, that's a good question. Okay, so I want to just flip back. Actually, hold on. Let me finish this. I'm going to flip back and answer your question in a moment. So power, we're moving quicker. So it's going to be that medium to heavier weight, and we can move a little faster. But we're working with weight that we learned and know that my body can handle in the strength phase. So it's not like I'm using a brand new weight for this phase, trying to move quickly. It's stuff I've used already and know that I can move a little bit quicker as well. Okay, so question was, am I doing all of these in one workout, or am I spreading them out through the summer? So the answer is you're spreading them out through the summer. I want you to think of all of these. So here's move well, strength, power. Okay, work capacity, move well, strength and anaerobic, power and brushing specific. So I'm going backwards through the slides, holding the position, repeating, and in and out quick. There's our power. So those are all the same 3 phases that you see here. So in gen prep, moving well, work capacity, and muscular endurance. Second phase, so let's say month 2. So we do about 4 to 6 weeks in this phase, 4 to 6 weeks in this phase. Now I'm working on moving well, strength. Okay, a little heavier weight if I'm comfortable with it, and anaerobic fitness. I'm introducing some intervals. And then the third phase, 4 to 6 weeks, we're moving well, our power focus, we're moving weight a little bit faster, we're doing more jumping, and we're doing sweeping specific intervals. Does that answer the question? Good.
Does for me.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, perfect. So now we're on exercises. This is what everybody came for. So I don't care the reasoning behind everything. Okay, so I mentioned that if I have an athlete wanting to be a stronger and fitter curler, these are the, I don't know, what do we got? 2, 4, so 8, 12, 16. These are the 16 to 24 exercises that I would be adding into their program, or variations of these exercises. How funny is that? That was my curling stopwatch. I use it for clients when I'm timing their exercises. Okay, so here's 16 to 24 exercises that can be included in your program. Okay, so for example, if you've got a squat, you could be doing a squat in the gen prep phase with 8 to 12 reps. You could be doing a squat in the strength phase with 5 to 10 reps. And you could be doing a squat in the power phase with the 5 to 10 coupled with some form of plyometric or power exercise, like a jump or a med ball slam or a skater hop. And I'm going to outline all those exercises here in a moment. Okay, so these are the exercises. They're in the program, but depending on which part of the off season is going to determine what sets and reps we're going to be doing. So to come back to the demands of curling, we need to be able to squat. So if you can see my cursor, a squat is a bend or a flexion, I'll be specific, at the ankle, at the knee, and at the hip. Okay, so I would drop my hips down and stand up. Okay, so this is front view and a side view of the same exercise, just to give you an idea of form. Under in what's called a goblet squat, holding the weight out front, which allows me, if I've got weight going out front, it allows me to get my hips back. Okay, because a lot of the things that I like to work on with athletes is making sure that they have access to their hips. Okay, imagine that you're throwing a ball. Okay, if I throw a ball like this or like this, where I wind up and I get my upper body, my torso, and I rotate and I spin, which one's going to go further? From out in front with my elbow or with my entire body? Right? You don't even have to answer. I know you're going to answer right, which is the big wind up. Okay, so what this demonstrates is that I'm able to transfer the energy. So kinetic energy is just the energy of movement through, I mean, throwing a ball is probably not my best example, right? I'm able to transfer that energy through my feet, okay? From the ground, through my feet, through the big muscles, down to, I'm gonna bend down so you can see the smaller muscles in my fingers. So the same thing in curling, we want our athletes to be efficient by using those big muscles. Lots of athletes struggle with squats. They go down and the knees go first and they can't get very low, and then they come up with their knees. Their knees are doing everything versus getting that weight back and loading up those hips. Think of my coaches, we're loading the hips. We need to teach our athletes how to get the weight back, right? And then use the big muscles through the small muscles to come up. Okay, so I love a goblet squat because the weight's out front, makes it easier for me to teach my athletes to get their weight back and to load these big bad boys. Okay, so squat, goblet squat is an example. We've got bend ankle, knee, and hip, loads of variations. Okay, they could do this with a band holding it at their chest. They can use a bar, they can use a machine. Okay, so all of these again are just movements. I can do this in a leg press if I'm not comfortable with using a machine. I could do it with my body weight if I've never worked out before. Okay.
What about knee position, Steph? In a squat, where should the knees be in relation to your feet, to your toes?
It depends on the athlete. One of the things that a lot of people were afraid of was letting their knees go past their toes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're not afraid of that anymore as long as your hips are getting back. So
Okay.
if you can see my photo, my video camera again, okay, if my knees try to go forward, this is what they actually meant, I think, okay? I don't want my knees to go past my toes because all they did was knees. And I'm like, this really hurts. So they figured if I get my weight back, it took stress off my knees, but then I don't have very good ankle range of motion. I actually can't go very far. I can't get very far down, okay? So knees past your toes is not the double if you're moving past it properly. Okay, so my cue is hips first. I want to kind of move the crowd, and then I can bend the knees.
But the knees,
use the hips.
the knees shouldn't collapse in either, right? Like they should stay.
We could talk for an entire hour about this. I wouldn't worry about it.
Okay.
Because if you've got an athlete that's like doing squats like this, then on the extreme end, absolutely, I'd want them to kind of push things out, but I definitely don't want them doing this. See, my feet aren't in contact with the ground anymore. So roughly knees over big toe is where I'm thinking. So my thigh bone angle is in line with where my big toes. Okay, so if I was a person that had to squat with my feet forward, that felt comfy, I want my knees to be tracking over my big toes. If I'm someone that really needs to turn their feet out, I want my knees to go out past my big toes. I think that answers your question, actually.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
I mean, don't squat like my last one there, but you get the gist. Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Deadlift. A lot of people are afraid of deadlift because it hurts their back, but that's because they're not using their hips. So again, a deadlift is just a hinge at the hips, and it's about getting the weight back, lengthening these muscles in the backs of the legs. They shouldn't be clenched. They should be lengthened. Because if you think about it, where am I stronger in a bicep curl? At the bottom? At the top? Technically, it's right in the middle, but where is it easier to be stronger? If I had a really heavy weight, hey, where is this easier? At the bottom or closer to the top? I guess I answered my question. So we need the muscles. So we're actually stronger near the top, but I need the bicep to lengthen in order for it to shorten and contract. So if you've got athletes who are walking around butt gripping, clenching, pushing their hips forward, and then they try to get in the hack, this is not lengthening. Remember how he talks about we make compensation? They're going to take it from their back. So you see lots of athletes squat down and then they tuck under. Okay, so deadlift is a hinge at the hips. We're opening up through the back. We can use a bar. We can use dumbbells. I'm doing dumbbells in 2 different ways here, one with 1 dumbbell, one with 2. Notice how close they are to my shins. Keep that weight close, get the hips back, and this should take it out of your low back into your hip. Okay? Now we've got split squats and lunges. Lunges, you can see I'm a little bit more forward. And split squats give me an opportunity to practice opening up that back hip. Okay, a lot of curlers get really stuck, especially on that left side, and their hips are turned right. They can't get that left hip back. So split squats are a great way, that's this one down here, at practicing getting that left hip back in space so that they can get lower in their slide and feel more stable. So both of these are awesome. We do lots of reps. We can be powerful out of these. We can increase our strength. Step ups, I think, are often missed. Okay, I want you to think about trying to get out of the hack. That foot in the hack is the knee is bent. Okay, so I squat down in the hack or I deadlift, whatever you are. Okay, I pull back and I've got this bend here. Okay, now I want to be able to push through from the hip and extend this leg. So right now, there's the top of my step up. See? I mean, you're obviously not way back there. So we're working on generating power from big booty, thunder, and lightning, okay, and not from the knees. Okay, again, these can be done lots of reps. They can be done with weights in your hands to get stronger, and they can be done powerful. We can add a jump to it if you feel uncomfortable. Okay, key movements that I think are in brushing. Okay, I think that we need to train for brushing. Everyone's like, oh, we need to get into plank position. Yay! We need to be able to hold our body weight up with our hands. We need to be able to move our body with our upper body. So this is really important. Notice I don't have a normal plank in here because this is a plank. Okay, I'm at the bottom of the plank in these 2 positions. And one of the things I like to point out with athletes, I don't want you putting your knees down because you don't sweep with your knees on the ground. Okay, I want you to be able to train the core to hold yourself up over the brush. Now, 5'2", I'm not holding any lower than this. Okay, and look at where my hands end up. So there's nothing wrong with an athlete who can't do push-ups from the ground, raising their hands up and practicing keeping the body nice and stable, not dropping their head, okay, keeping the hips from sagging down, okay, keeping that body awareness and control, endurance. And as they get comfortable at an elevated surface, we can lower them down towards the floor. Okay, so no more girl push-ups. All right, single arm rows, any type of row. So a row is pulling something towards your body. Okay, so we're not actually, I want you to look at the angle here. I'm not pulling straight up. I'm going to show you in my video. When we pull straight up, watch the shoulder on this side. If I pull straight up, I have to do this. I have to shrug. Do I want my brushing to look like this? I want my brushing to be a pull towards my hip. There's my arm alongside my body, depending on your range of motion of your shoulders. Some people can go higher, some people can't. So you'll see I've got them in line with my wrist and then back towards, I'm gonna say pocket, but it could just be like beside your belly button. Okay, I think single arm rows are really important because everyone can agree that we need downward force. Someone put it in the chat while we're brushing. But when we're bringing that brush back underneath us, it's helpful to know how to apply downward pressure even though we're pulling. So I want you to think about in a single arm row, this arm is pushing my body away. My feet are pushing my body over the brush. Okay, and even though my left arm here is rowing and pulling, I'm still applying downward pressure. I'm still getting my body weight over my brush. Okay, lots of variations with single arm rows. You can attach a band. You could do dumbbells, get strong, powerful. Okay, seated rows, table rows, all are really good for developing that powerful pull stroke. Now, brushing technically isn't I'm not in the brushing position like this and pushing straight down and straight up. It's actually on a bit of a 45. Okay, So advanced exercises, if you've got an athlete that can do alternating incline row or incline presses, so they're not upright, they're not on a bench, they're kind of pressing up on an angle, those are really good too. But I also want people to be teaching themselves to pull from vertical inwards. Not directly transferable, but what I've noticed with vertical pulls is it teaches us to use, this photo is actually not super accurate, the backs of the arms, and this muscle right here, your latissimus dorsi, huge back muscle. Everyone's like, I need a strong six pack for curling. You need a massive lat muscle, because that's what's stabilizing your back while and initiating that pull stroke for you. So unfortunately, my backyard didn't have anything for me to set this up, so I had to steal from the internet. Again, reason I said these are my main exercises. Here's a plank. So yes, we still need to do normal planks. Here's a side plank. Really isolate those obliques. Okay. And then if you've got the strength in the shoulder, this is demonstrating the strength in the arm, the health of the arm, and the obliques, and the control through the midline of the body.
Question. What about?
Oh yeah, I see that. We're done
Okay.
there. What about connected pull-ups instead of vertical pull? You mean not the slide? This slide. We're gonna get this. Okay.
Stay tuned.
Because again, we're working with U15, U18. So in terms of their LTAB, we're looking at moving efficiently, teaching them the main movements. Okay, so it doesn't necessarily have to be as complicated as possible. We just want them to have really good form and to gain some confidence as they slowly get a little stronger, whether it's body weight, adding a resistance band, or adding in some heavier weights. Okay, so this phase at the end of the summer, now you could be introducing these throughout, but we really want to focus on these powerful movements at the end of the summer in that final phase. So here's a couple of examples that literally end up in all of my programs. Okay, this is called a bear plyo push-up. So I lower myself down onto a bench, my knees are bent, and I push and explode off. Okay, so obviously this is not the best piece of equipment to do this on. For lots of reps, it's not very stable. Make sure your athletes are picking safe pieces of equipment, okay? So bear plyo, you're gonna lower down, push your body away, lower down, push your body away. And now we're teaching them to keep a stable spine while being explosive in the arms. Okay. We also are getting more comfortable holding our body weight over the brush there. Med ball slams, something that I feel like if we're working out from home, a med ball, they're squishy, they don't bounce. You get the ones that bounce, don't get hit in the face when it bounces you back. Okay, the squishy sand-filled med balls, I find are really great at being powerful. They help in the strength phase. Okay, they're a really lower cost piece of equipment that your athletes can use for travel, you're going to a cottage, etc. So I'm reaching up nice and high, and then I'm slamming and throwing that weight down as I get my hips back. Okay, so you can do lots of reps with those. They can get heavy, do lower reps, etc. Long jumps. I think long jumps are important. So I think these are important because it demonstrates the health of the shoulder. Okay, full body power. When you reach up and send those hips back, you're going to feel the tension growing in your core. Long jumps, I feel like are really important. By the way, taking a timer photo on a power move apparently looks like I'm having a lot of fun. So loading up in the squat, in the hack, I'm about to kick out of the hack. And then I'm teaching my body, hopefully in your case, you have more space in your backyard and can jump nice and far. Now, when I had chronic knee pain for like the first 10 years of my curling career, I hated jumping. It hurt my knees and I couldn't jump very far, even if I was willing to push past that knee pain. So my athletes that have knee pain, this is a benchmark because not only are you confident with jumping, but your nervous system is going to gain confidence as well and allow you to be more powerful out of the hack. When we're injured in the lower body, our nervous system is not going to allow you to kick harder out of the hack because it knows that it can't control the descent, the landing. And I know it's a stretch, but technically we're kicking and kind of jumping and eccentrically loading those lower body muscles as we land in a slide. Okay, we're not jumping, but you get this picture. So I add jumping into my programs, even though this is double leg, because it demonstrates the health of the ankle, knee, hip, my back, okay? And I'm able to coordinate the muscles from the big hip muscles through the knee, through the ankle. I don't want my athletes just jamming, pushing their knees back to jump. I want them to use their hips to jump, and that's going to transfer to curling. And then lastly, a skater hop, getting a little bit of a lateral movement. One of the mistakes I made early on in my training career was only worrying about forwards and backwards. Whereas curling in life happens in rotation, but then also in a side to side motion. So the skater squat, this one was tough to kind of take a photo of before and after. Okay, but I'm actually rotating over. I'm rotating over this hip. I'm getting this hip back. And when I hop, I'm doing the same thing on the other. So I'm teaching my body how to coil and load and push. Okay, so I think skater hops are really important. Again, someone who's injured, this is going to be very painful. Okay, so obviously we're not using these when someone's injured, but they're going to demonstrate a really healthy system if they can do these exercises. Okay, so by the end of the summer. Now I put these as advanced. So again, we're talking about U15, U18, basic movements, basic strength. If we get an athlete doing even just the first 2 slides of exercises, okay, they do these ones, they do these ones. They do the strength, the endurance for 8 to 12. Then in the middle of the summer, they do 5 to 10 reps. And then later in the summer, they're doing power moves on top of it. Okay, even if they do that, they're moving really well. Okay, they've increased their muscular endurance, they're confident. They might have access to more movement positions because I'm stretching my hips here. Okay, I'm stretching my hips, hamstrings here. Okay, I'm when we get to here, I'm stretching through the chest muscles. So they're stretching while they're exercising. They're getting flexible from a place of strength. Okay, so I think a lot of athletes are going to get a lot of benefit from this if they're brand new to curling. And of course, those who want to make a curling specific program. They just want to identify, I want to do CrossFit. I want to do Orange Theory. I want to do Zumba. Here are the exercises you're going to do 1 or 2 times a week to support your curling while doing the things that you like to do for fun. Okay. Okay. And then lastly, more advanced movements. Now, granted, I think that if we can get our youth athletes to be able to do shrimp squats and chin-ups, they're going to be in a space where they're way stronger than their competitors when they get older. Okay? Think of how many adults you know that can do a chin-up. I want to teach, the only reason I learned how to do a chin-up is because back in 10th grade, I learned how to do a chin-up and I just never stopped doing them. Okay? It's really hard to not know how to do it and then try to learn it. So U15, U18, we're giving them the physical literacy and the confidence for them to take that into adulthood. Regardless if they keep curling or not, I think that's really important. So shrimp squats, I think they look like a shrimp. So you got to name them fun things. So I'm starting up high. You could do this unsupported or supported, depending, and remember, meeting your athletes where they're at. We could raise this pillow up so they don't have to go down as far, but this is really single leg strength and control. Back when I had knee pain, I couldn't do these. Now I can bang out 5 to 10 of them if you paid me money. Hey, but we have a bet. What do we got? Okay, good. Okay, so yeah, shrimp squats I think are really important. Chin-ups I think are really important. The reason I didn't add them to the earlier list is I don't want to discourage someone. If they're like, I can't do a chin-up, let's work on push-ups. Let's work on vertical pulls. That could be a lat pull down. It could be with a band. Okay, lots of different movements or vertical pulling. But if you're ready for the challenge, then adding chin-ups I think is perfect. Okay, so mix up the difference. But to me, if you want to make this as curling specific as possible, we actually want your palms facing in or together. Okay, so this is a stretch, but as a competitive athlete myself, thank you, Andrew, for the intro. I've noticed that if I can teach myself how to stabilize here, so not arch through the back to do that chin up, if I can stabilize here while I pull my body weight up, when you bring me into a brushing position and I'm pulling, I'm able to stabilize my core even more. Okay, so rows are really important, but then these chin-ups I think have huge transfer, that ability to stabilize the trunk while we're moving our arms. So I prefer hands facing in or each other, just because at the bottom, when I pull back, okay, my arms are in this position when I'm sweeping. Okay, so at the top of the chin up, I'm more like this. Okay, but we're getting pretty close to making some inferences here. Whereas this, if I'm doing my pull-ups or whatever, whichever one they are, like this, I don't sweep like this. So yes, I get big back muscles, but I don't sweep like this. Not very transferable. I think both are great. I just really like these. My favorite is actually if you're holding onto rings or the TRX, because it allows a little bit of variance in how the shoulders are positioned. Okay, it makes it a little easier. I think chest presses can be added in earlier, but some people are a little afraid of putting a weight kind of over their face. Okay, so I really want people to pay attention to push-ups. You can use machines, you can use cables to push. And then if you're feeling comfortable, you've got a spotter, you've got a confident friend to help you out, I think that chest presses, so I say chest because it doesn't have to be a barbell bench. We're just pushing away. Okay, I think that they're a great advanced, or depending on what level you're at. The reason I put suitcase deadlifts in the advanced section, a suitcase deadlift to me is a combination between a squat and a deadlift. And I want my athletes to be able to do a straight leg deadlift, that hinge that I demonstrated. So knees don't bend, just at the hips. I want them to demonstrate this. Okay, and I want them to demonstrate ankle, knee, and hip. Okay, before we add in suitcase deadlifts, which is kind of a combination between the two. So the hips go back, we bend the knees, we keep the chest up, the arms are tight, and we stand up. Hips back, hips through. Okay, so I want them to be able to demonstrate both of those before we worry too much about the suitcase deadlift. However, I put a lot of athletes in the suitcase deadlift right away because it's a nice combination. I don't squat and I don't deadlift while I'm curling. I kind of get in this more athletic and powerful position. Okay, beautiful. So one of the questions that Andrew wanted me to cover was what kind of equipment do we need? And I want you to meet your athlete where they're at based on their goals. So someone newer to training is going to be more comfortable likely with body weight, bands, at-home stuff, where someone who's done it for a while, it's a good chance to increase strength, increase force. We can increase our power by introducing heavier weights and possibly venturing towards a gym or just outfitting your home to have a couple more things. Okay, so I do think body weight bands and gym are appropriate for everyone, but we want to meet the athletes where they're at. What are they comfortable with? What are they more likely to do? Maybe if they're like, I really just want to do body weight, maybe we convince them to pick one exercise that's going to use bands or a little bit of a heavier weight. Increase their confidence nice and slowly so that when you introduce another exercise, they're like, oh, okay, I was successful with that last one. I can do this one, okay? Perfect. Okay, last piece. Lifting for kids is encouraged. Okay, so there's lots of research out there. A Twitter friend of mine sent me a bunch of research papers that were talking about how lifting can be safe for youth. He has some restrictions. I'm definitely not trying to get my athletes to increase their 1 rep max. Like, we're not trying to load them up so much that their bones are going to fall apart. One of the key things is that we are progressively overloading them, which means that they're starting with lighter weight, they're owning the positions, and progressively teaching their body that, yes, I can do more repetitions. Yes, I can do a little bit heavier weight. So I have no problem with youth lifting heavy if they've progressed their way there. They're not day one, 110 pounds, putting 110 pounds on their back. They're slowly making sure that the nervous system, the joints, the bones, the muscles, the brain, all those pieces are comfortable and ready and able to handle that task. Okay, so I think where the issue was back when they did that study in 1999, before that actually, one of the things I believe was wrong with that study that said that youth would stunt their growth. I didn't start lifting until I was out of puberty, my friends, and I'm 5'2", so it wasn't lifting that stunted my growth. Okay, the problem was that the humans that they were using, I don't think it was a very humane study. I think that it had something to do, the people that they were using were malnourished. Like, I don't think it was a safe study. Whereas now they're looking at performance markers of progressively overloaded programs. So progressively overload is basically like, I can do 5 repetitions of a bicep curl with that weight down there, and eventually I can do 6, and eventually I can do 7, until I get it myself up to 12, and maybe I try a little bit heavier. So that's slowly teaching my body to, oh, this is hard. I'm going to recover from it. My muscles are going to recover. And then I'm going to try that again. 6 is easy. Now I'm going for 7. Okay. One of the things that they have noticed is that, especially our athletes that are more sedentary outside of curling, when they add in, so again, I'm not outside of curling, outside of sport, okay, they found that athletes who are sedentary outside of their sport, they train twice a week with their team and they have competitions, but they don't do any other exercise, versus those athletes that are multi-sport and or doing some form of training. The ones that are training are actually going to increase their strength, increase their power, increase their linear speed, increase their jump height. Okay, they're going to be way more body aware. So the benefits are really high for athletes who are taking on strength training early. And I think with curling, what I'm noticing is a lot of athletes at all ages and at all levels are unfit for curling. They can do it, but they're taping themselves up. They need an RMT every weekend. Okay, they're injured. Their body is not prepared for the demands of the sport. And we want our athletes to be stronger than the demands of the sport. Think of Team Moet. I certainly don't need to be powerlifting, throwing weight over my head, double my body weight, but they're so freaking strong that curling is easy. And I think that's our goal with our athletes, not necessarily powerlifting like Team Moet, because our 100% curling only athletes. They don't have any other job. Well, they kind of do, but you understand what I'm saying. But I think we need to get our athletes stronger, especially as they're younger, so they can handle curling. So we have them for longevity in the sport and longevity in competition. They also enjoy it more and they're stronger. Okay, any questions about what I just talked about? I did pretty good, almost just over an hour.
You did great. It's awesome.
Perfect. A couple of things, if you've got questions, put them in the chat, but a couple of things that are happening this off season. So I work with 90% of my clientele are curlers across the world of all levels and all ages. Okay, so I actually have 8 done for you DIY programs that you can purchase for yourself and your team. And they're templates, they're on Excel, they have YouTube videos with links to the exercises. So you don't have to teach them, they watch the YouTube video. They can keep track of their progress. Okay, so I'm going to show you a couple of those in a moment. If you're a team that is like, oh, I'm a technical coach. I need someone to take on the role of their physical coach. So I have team programs, but I also have opportunities for just doing an assessment, getting the team started, and helping to customize one of the programs that they're looking for. So if they really want to become a better brusher, we'll focus on better brushing. If they want to become an overall fitter human, then we can modify that as well. So I can help you with that program. Lastly, second to last, I'm running 3 workshops with the World Curling Association. That's associated with the WCF, and they're going to be workshops. So instead of just sitting and listening to me talk, I'm going to give you activities to do on these workshops. And they're super affordable. The recording will, of course, be available, but we're talking about brushing, balance and power on the delivery, and then cardio specifically for curling. So some of the stuff we've kind of touched on today. And please check out my podcast. I've had some pretty awesome guests on in the past. Andrea, I need to invite you on my phone.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, why not? So much talk about curling. These are all the programs. Okay, I'm going to leave this up here. What questions you got in the chat?
We do have a question. When do you introduce breathing? And then another person named Perry said, and now you finally took a breath.
some random dude named Perry. Yeah. I took breaths. I had to drink my tea.
You did great.
Okay, when do I introduce breathing? You mean like how to breathe?
Big breaths are best? Yes. Mike says yes.
Yeah, okay. I'm more just looking, so join me for the World Curling Academy Choreo for Curling presentation, and we're going to talk all about that. I don't want to stress people out with breathing. One of the things, because I feel like that's something we do 20,000 times a day, and so many people get stressed that they're doing it wrong. But for me, breath work, breathing, you've kind of got day-to-day breathing. You've got while I'm exercising or curling breathing, and I've got at rest breathing. So often I have my athletes focus first at rest to try to get them to try to breathe a little quieter, maybe keep their mouth closed because that has great facial feature, teeth, nasal, immune system benefits. Okay, nasal breathing is really important. But I have them focus on it at rest mostly because that's the easiest space. I'm not doing anything. So the demand for me to breathe isn't as high. It's a little less stressful if you're telling your athletes to try to breathe through their nose more, breathe a little quieter at rest. Now that translates into curling. It's kind of hard to think about your breathing while you're sweeping, okay? But when you stand up after sweeping, I have my athletes just be aware, is your first breath in your mouth or is it in your nose? We want to try to get the breath back into the nose as early as possible. There's a caveat here. Of course, it's got deviated septum. We need to talk separately, but most people are going to benefit most from trying to get at least their inhale in through their nose. Okay. After that, when we're training, I do the same thing. So have my athletes pay attention to at rest, recovery, and then it depends really on the goal of the session. I want people to be able to think about, back to my example of really unfit person versus Caitlin Laws. Who can get to the top of the stairs with their mouth closed? Likely Caitlin Laws, not likely the unfit person. So if you can do more work breathing in and out your nose, you have a more efficient system. So with U18 athletes, it's more of an awareness thing. I definitely wouldn't be directing them too much, but I definitely would be suggesting at rest when they're watching TV, can you remember, oops, I'm breathing through my mouth, close my mouth, breathe through my nose. Nice and simple, nothing to stress them out too much. I hope that answered your question. Okay. Any tips to keep younger athletes motivated to work out consistently over the summer? So I did a really wonderful, I had Emily Riley on my podcast twice now. And one of the presentations she actually talked about motivation and consistency. So I want to direct you more towards her. Actually, EmilyRiley.ca. So Emily Riley plays with Laurie St. George. You know that name?
Just a tad.
Just a tad. So she's a mental performance coach. And there's more restrictions on mental performance coaches on who they can work with. So she actually can't train anybody that she's going to compete against. So she works with U18 curlers only. And if you go to her website, EmilyRiley.ca, the total athlete in French or English, and she's got a U18 only program for the summer. And I am so jealous that I'm not U18. So I highly recommend you check that out at least if you're looking for more mental performance. I forgot what the original question was.
Any tips for keeping
motivated?
Yeah,
because, okay, so she was on my podcast and talked all about motivation. For me, what I like to do with my athletes is do a really good intake. So lots of reflection, lots of what do you want to get better at? Okay? Not necessarily testing, but identifying those gaps. There's something that happens if there's a big amount of dissonance between where I am now and where I want to be. So we obviously don't want to make goals that are so big that it feels too far away. We want to make manageable goals. So I've got an athlete that wants to improve their push-ups. We're not going to go from up my piano bench for 5 and say the goal is 20 from the floor by the end of the week. Like that's not going to be motivating. Okay, we want realistic, come back to that SMART goals. So I do a huge intake. We do a lot of video analysis. We look at how well they're moving. We look at their fitness. We really identify what are the things that this athlete needs to improve to take them to that next level next season. And I find that that provides them the motivation, but it's the discipline. So when it comes to, like, you can be super motivated. I'm super motivated in the morning, but I don't want to get out of bed. It's not motivation that gets me up. It's the discipline. It's that I need to get up to do this workout now because I have a goal, and it's going to suck right now. And I'm going to do my warm up, and I'm going to get the music pumping, and I'm going to be ready to go. So often I find that those that get unmotivated in the summer, their goal was too big, or they didn't do any analysis. Their program is too hard or too easy, and it's not manageable for them. I had a coach this year that really wanted their athletes to work out 6 times a week, but when I talked to them, they didn't have time for 6 times a week. So if they were like, okay, I have to do 6 times a week, coach said I had to do 6 times a week, but they really only can do 2 or 3. Let's set realistic goals and say, let's push for 3. They're going to feel way more confident, way more motivated than missing 3 workouts a week. That's very demoralizing. Okay, so I like to set people up for success. So this, you know what I should really put? So our website, 2023-off-season-menu, has all the information. There's your performance gap analysis. Weekly workouts are canceled, actually. Workshop, progressive program options. The podcast is up top here. So all of these things that I'm showing here, the menu, there's a menu of things that people can do. Anyways, any other questions? There's all your programs. Oh yeah, the podcast there. Did you find the episode with Emily? There's 2 of them.
Absolutely. There's a couple of episodes with Emily.
Yeah.
So
she's great
easy
too.
to find.
Yeah, she's great. So the podcast is available on Curling News. It's available on my website, and it's available on all the other streaming web options. So if you're like, I want to watch it, can't watch me, because I'm like, realistically, I'm curled up like a little gremlin in my chair when I'm doing my episodes. But you can watch those graphics and stuff on through Curling News. But yeah, lots of little things to pay attention to. Email me if you've got any questions, if I just overwhelmed you. For this age group, U18, U15, I am in the process of putting together a 2-month program. So the idea is that I know a lot of athletes, they're like, oh yeah, I want to work out. Right now is not the greatest time. They've got exams. And most often our curlers are also academically gifted. They're doing all the other sports. This time of year is very, very difficult for them. So this could be a time you're doing your analysis, you're gathering information, maybe you're introducing a couple of exercises. But if you've got some really, I'm focusing on school types, I've put together this program that's actually 2 months long, and it still has all 3 phases. Okay, what we got? Yes, and Emily was just on with Bill on the Pain in the Glass podcast and talked more about her program. Well worth the listen. Yes, perfect. She's pretty awesome. I wish I had more time for other people's podcasts. Listening to them, listening to them. Anyways, that's great. Great.
This has been absolutely wonderful. If anybody wants to open up their mics and ask a question, now's the time to do it. So one thing I wanted to say about Steph and her empowered performance, her enthusiasm is hardly contagious, right? I mean, I feel inspired walking away, and I go for walks every day, and I'm always looking for something different to listen to, rather than who killed who and how long it takes to do the investigation. Anyway, so thanks for the reminder that there are other options. But Steph is an expert, and her programs are affordable. And you can apply it to your team. So if you think of it as, I'm getting one program that I can apply to 5 or 6 people, including the coach. This is really...
Coaches have taken my programs before too, 100%.
Yeah.
Coaches, husbands,
Yeah. So
parents, this U15, U18, lots of times parents kind of join in a little bit.
Yes. So it's family shareable. And the other thing about it is if you're looking for sponsorship, this is another sell with the sponsors. You know, this is what our team has committed to for the season, with regard to conditioning and getting ready for the season. So this has been awesome.
Thank you so much. This is great. I'm so happy that we had so many live people. This is so awesome.
Oh, yes, it's outstanding. This is
So fun.
a great turnout. 52 people, so that's great. The recording is going to be available to everybody. I will, once it's downloaded within the next 2 days, I'll share the recording. It will be via YouTube, so you can share it with your athletes as well. They can watch it on their own. Steph always attracts a crowd.
I think it's a competition, Carrie. You're going to have to run a webinar now. How did the OCC generate so much money? The coaches got into competition.
Remember, please, that Steph does make a living at this, and so if you're sharing it with people, please share it judiciously. Easy for you to say. That this is not for you to make money on. This is for your enjoyment and for work with your teams and your teams only. I'll also be entering attendance into the locker. If you have attended the webinar and you don't see credit for it in the locker, please let me know and I will make that happen. And anybody that's going to be watching it separately, let me know once you've watched it, and then I will add you to the locker record. So thank you so much, Stephanie. This is
Thanks for having me.
awesome as usual. So we will be in touch for next season. We'll have to think of
Perfect.
I
have many ideas.
Awesome. Excellent. Good. Thank you. So if there's no other questions, then I think we are going to sign off.
Perfect.
And
Thank you, everybody.
June 22nd, don't forget, there's another part 2 of the delivery with Morris Wilson. So please, if you haven't registered already, make sure you do. And then as things come up, I will keep you informed. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Andrea, I was late.
Oh, no problem, Bertha. I gotcha.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Okay. Take care. Good
Goodbye.
night.
Have a good night.